Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. My name is Mike, and in this video, we're going to do some brake work on this car. This is my 2003 Mercedes C32 AMG. For more details on this car, check out the introduction video I've got on my channel. The issue that I'm going to be hopefully solving with this is that I've got a really long brake pedal, even after bleeding the brakes, and I'm getting kind of a whooshing noise when I press the brake underneath the dash. So I believe I've got a leak in the brake booster. The brakes will work, but the pedal is long, it's spongy, and it kind of sucks. So we've got some new parts here. These came in from FCP Euro. I've got a brake booster. I'm going to replace the master cylinder and do a full bleed with new fluid. I'll be using a power bleeder to do that as well. I was also getting a BAS and ESP light that'll come on periodically, which from what I understand is legally related. So when I looked on YouTube, there were little to no videos that would show this process. So hopefully this video will be helpful for you, and I'll walk you through the entire thing. So let's go ahead and get started. Okay, to show you the issue that I've got, I'm in the car right now, and again, I've got a long brake pedal. Also, when I press on the brake, listen to the sound I get. You can hear the air from underneath there. And you can see it's quite a long pedal, not great performance. So that is part of what I'm hoping to solve with this remedy. All right, got to start out in the engine bay. This is mine, did some kind of cool custom painting on the engine. Again, there's a cool intro video that walks through that whole kind of the details of the car. First thing I'm going to do is disconnect the battery. If you're not familiar with where to find that, you just remove these three clips right here. This will allow you to remove this is a cover for your battery and also has your cabin filter in it, which is right there. And there's the battery. So I'll disconnect the negative terminal. It's going to be a 10 mil, and we'll start out with that. I also recently did a full reorganization of my garage. There's another video on my channel for that too, if you're interested in basically what I did to get organized. So again, it's very easy for me to find my 10 mil. I go over here, everything I need is right here. I recommend whenever you're working on under the hood, in the engine bay, using this type of a fender cover. So I've got my negative terminal disconnected. I also noticed I've got a little bit of corrosion in the battery, so I'll clean that up and put some dielectric grease on there when I reinstall. Okay, again, there are no videos that I could find on even removing the brake booster. So the brake booster, if you're not aware, is basically on the outside of the firewall. It's hidden kind of underneath some things. We'll get to that in a little bit. And there are two bolts, I believe, 2 or 4 bolts that go through, kind of studs on the brake booster that go through the firewall, and there's nuts that are attached. Those are up underneath the dash. So this whole bottom piece has got to come out. In order for that to happen, first, this whole radio area needs to come out. So that's the first thing we're going to do, is get this removed. All right, clarification. These are the 2 studs. This is the new unit for the brake booster. That whooshing sound, I think, this diaphragm goes in and out. Basically, it's a mechanical apparatus that then feeds into the master cylinder, which attaches here. I've got a brand new one of those as well. I don't know if I need both. I'm quite confident the brake booster is bad, but I figure if I'm going to go in there and I'm going to open the system and I have to bleed it anyway, I might as well just replace it. So these, again, are the 2 studs that are going to come through the firewall. The objective at this point with removing everything is to be able to get to these nuts that hold this on and be able to release this as well from the brake pedal mechanism. Okay, so to remove the radial section, the first thing you need to do is remove this vent area. I've owned several W203s and in the past have made errors when removing this. Here is the way it goes. If you look at each of these vents, it's the same on both sides. There are these 2 little clips. They're both on the left side of the vent. If you go in there, you take a screwdriver like this, just a small flathead, and you notice first, prior to doing this, if you rotate this, you can't get a screwdriver in here, right? The whole thing you're going to do is take this vent. I'm going to try to do this one-handed. And you can see that tab right there that is spring-loaded. You're going to move the lower tab And as you do that, you roll it up to expose a screw that is in there. See that screw? You're going to remove that screw, do the same thing on the other side. I've done this, again, on multiple W203s. Sometimes it's a Torx, sometimes it's a Phillip head screw. Also, the screw is going to be inside of a molded piece of plastic. So when you remove the screw, it's not going to drop inside the dashboard. So in other words, when you're unscrewing it and you may be like, what the heck's going on? It's not going to come out. It won't come out. It'll come out and be kind of clicked into this whole assembly. So let me go ahead and do the same thing on this vent. I'll loosen the screws, I'll move this piece out, and I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so there's both vents, tweaked up so that I can get to the screws. And I lied. In my case, these screws did come out, but a lot of times I see where there's like a plastic clip in there that holds them in place. All right, the next thing you do is gently remove this piece. If you need to, you can use like a panel tool as well. In a lot of cases, I've just been able to gently remove it. All right, I figured this was easier to explain the rest once I had it out. So I told you how to remove the screws. Then you go to the upper clip. You can see it right there. You're going to bend it out, rotate the vent down. That's going to allow you to get a pick tool in there and push down. There are these little clips right here. And there's 4 of them that go along, 2 right here in the center, one underneath my hand here, and one over here, and they hold the top section in. So that's what you do to get that part out. There's 1 wire, and also be cognizant and careful of this right here. This is your center control temperature adjustment. You don't want to move this once you've got this out, because it's going to line up with that rod once you put it back in the car. So unplug it and we'll pull this piece out. You'll also may need to pull back this piece, which is just kind of pushed in place with clips. All right, I had to drop my windows. It's September 15th and still 100 degrees here in Arizona. All right, so center vent is out. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to this piece, which basically just pops in. So give me 1 sec, I'll show you how this is removed. All right, I forgot, there's actually a couple of screws which are kind of tucked in behind this area. So I've got the ashtray out. Next, you just want to, you need to pull this out, which pops out, slides forward. I can put it in gear to move my shifter out of the way. My battery is still hooked up. Now, let's see here. Okay, now this, if I recall, yeah, let me recall how to get this off. I remember this pops out, and then this whole assembly is going to come out, and you'll be able to get to the 2 screws holding the bottom of this trim piece. All right, I just want to show and kind of explain how this goes. You see this hole right here? This tab right here is kind of vertically going to slip into that hole and lock in. So you basically just need to push on the tab, it'll release it and allow you to pull this out. There's also a couple of wires here. You want to disconnect those or just move this out of the way. Those wires go to the light inside the ashtray, and if you just unplug the whole light, the whole socket comes right out. All right, this next part can be a little bit tricky, and I'll walk you through it. Underneath there's one. My car did not have the screws, but I've seen where there are screws in this panel, 2 screws. There are also 2 metal tabs. I'm using a mirror to show you that. See that tab? So that basically it locks into place. You want to take like I use a right angle pick tool, get in there and just kind of pop it, and that'll drop that metal clip to allow you to remove the panel. So I'm gonna go ahead and get it out, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's out of the car. Actually, before I pull it out, that's what it'll look like when they're dropped down. It's very simple with a right angle pick tool to get in there and unclip it. And now at this point, this panel will remove, and you're going to have some wiring as well to unplug, a couple of sockets in the back. Okay, this connector just plugs in. There's only one way it can go, so that's pretty easy. I'm on the lower part now. These connectors, if you've never used these before, these can be a little bit tricky. See this gray tab? This is going to pivot. There is a little plastic clip that holds it up. So I'm going to push, see if I can do all this with one hand. I'm pushing down on the plastic tab, which now will allow me to, man, I hope. There we go. All right, so now I'm able to slide that and then lock it into place to be able to remove it. There is, I'll show you functionally the way that this works out of the car here. So that's the little catch I was pushing down, and that's what holds this in place. If you've been working on cars for a while, you've probably seen this type of a connector. I've seen multiple manufacturers use this. So, all right, and then we're gonna just unplug the top two connectors. Only one way those can go as well, so you don't need to worry about screwing them up. All right, I don't know if it's completely necessary, but just to play it safe and make it easier, I'm gonna remove the radio. I need to get to these two bolts, screws that are holding on this panel. So that's why I'm digging this whole section apart. So the screws to pull the radio out are a T20. There are 4 of those. Here's a little pro tip also. I get these things from Harbor Freight, little magnetic trays. I like using these to put all my screws in, just to make sure I don't lose anything. So let's go ahead and remove the radio. Okay, radio successfully removed. This pocket, by the way, don't be alarmed if it just kind of falls in your hands as you pull the radio out. It slips into the bottom of the radio. There's a couple of tabs. And then when you put it in, that's what kind of sandwiches the whole thing in. A little pro tip here too, I replace this. They often get really gummy and they crack. There is the part number. I replaced mine with a Mercedes piece, as you can see. So if you need the part number, there it is for you. One quick thing I want to clarify. When you pull out this panel, I misunderstood, guys and gals, I apologize. There are no screws at the bottom. It's just those clips. And that's a better shot of what the clip looks like. When it goes into the car, it locks into the piece here. Those 2 holes that I've got, I don't know what's going on with those. There's no screws in there and it doesn't seem like they do anything, so I'm not too worried about it. So, all right, moving on. All right, with the radio removed, we're gonna go ahead and remove 1, I believe 2, 3 T20s that are gonna hold this piece in place. So we'll do that now. All right, with those 3 screws out, this there's like a plastic trim ring around your key section. This threads in. This is gonna unthread. So we're just gonna go ahead and gently remove that. All right, next thing to remove is the headlight switch. This can be, a lot of people screw this up, it's kind of tricky, and they end up trying to pull it out and mar this all up and or break it. There is a screw, a T20, that is where my finger is right here. If you pull this lever forward and put your finger in there, you'll feel it. I've already pulled the screw out. You're gonna pull that screw out, and then we're gonna pop this piece off. I'll grab a panel popper. This just pulls off, and then you're gonna be able to push the little metal tab from the side and gently remove the headlight switch. All right, if you don't have a set of plastic trim tools, I would highly encourage picking some up. Harbor Freight, they're like $5 or $10. This just pops out, and you pull the bottom out. Trying to do this one-handed. A lot of times it's easier to understand how things come out after you've got them out. So this is what it looks like. These 2 clips right here, this one and this one, when you reinstall this, can't wait till I'm at that point, they're gonna go in first, and then this snaps into place. So using these little tabs right here are what hold it in place. So you're gonna remove that. Next, this right here is the metal tab that you wanna push on. See this clip? And that just pops out. No worry of marring up the dashboard or doing anything crazy. This removes, and once again, we've got the same type of connector. Push down. Let's see if I can do this one-handed once again. Push down. I don't want to drop it. Okay, we're removed. One little detail. Man, I love Mercedes. They give you a nice detailed diagram of the fuses, which they store right there with the fuse box. Pretty cool. All right, once you have the headlight switch out, you're gonna take out those 2 screws and that one right there. They're all 3 are T20s. All right, next step is going to be removing the cable from the hood release. So as you can see, this is your hood release, as you likely know, I would hope. You can see a little groove right in there, and you basically need to take the cable. I really doubt I can do this one-handed. Barely do it two-handed because it's really tight and kind of tough. So you basically just need to push on the, there we go. Look at that, holy cow, I got it. That's what you need to do. And then next, excuse me, we're going to remove the screws at the bottom of the dashboard. I believe those are T20s as well. So we'll go ahead and do that. Hold up real quick before you pull these screws out. If you really want to be kind of OCD like I am, the 3 that you pulled out from up here in the dashboard have washers. See that? These 3 on the bottom of the dash do not have washers. So you want to keep those organized. With the 3 under dash screws removed, we got a couple of more things to get out of here. One of them is going to be, we'll start with this. This is the OBD connector. If you notice here, I can grab this and we're going to slide that towards the passenger side, which will allow this to unplug. And then next, there is this junction ground block thing back here, which, forget which way it slides. Give me 1 second. All right, this thing you're gonna slide this way. You see those little teeth, those little legs that hold it on, slide it that way. And then just kind of work your hood release cable out, and then this panel is going to be removed. Another little pro tip, when I'm working on something like this is I'll call it a relatively big job. I either keep my screws with the like parts, or if I can, I'll put the screws back into place. So these, again, the ones I got with the washers for the dash, I'll put those in a magnetic tray. But these I will put back in this piece. I really like Alex Palmieri's videos, Legit Street Cars. He uses muffin tins. That's a really cool idea. You can pick those up at the dollar store. You could even write inside the muffin, bottom of the muffin tin what the part goes to. So just get organized, and that way you don't end up with mismatched hardware down the road, or, parts missing. All right, let's keep going. So on the bottom side of the dash, there are normally 2 screws holding it in and remaining. There's that one right there that's still screwed in all the way. And there's normally another one over here. But to the point I just made earlier, you want to come up with an organized manner to be able to keep your screws straight. I didn't do that. That was the previous owner. I'll replace that screw. I have spares. All right, let's keep moving forward. All right, once you've got all the screws out, there are 2 tabs that kind of the bottom of the dash lock into. See those clips right there? This side pulls down pretty easy. This, you're gonna have to wrestle with it a little bit because you've got to pull it over that piece. So just gently work it, and then you'll be able to pull this out. And then we still have the cable for the parking brake, which is going to release much like the hood latch. So go ahead and release that, and then this bottom piece can come out. Victory is mine, bottom dash piece. Came out unscathed. This, just so you know, is going to want to, the only thing holding it in place is the cable. So once you remove the cable, this is going to want to fall as well. All right, let's keep going. All right, bottom dash area removed. The bottom dash in the radio, there are other YouTube videos that show how to do that. I'm not going to lie, I watched some of them just to see what there was to learn. At this point, I have not seen any documentation videos on what I'm about to do. So if you are attempting this repair, I highly encourage you to watch the entire video, get to the end, because if I identify where there's things we don't need to do, I will tell you. So here's the brake pedal. Up inside here, I can see there is the first nut for the brake booster. There's also the connection that goes to the brake booster as well. So it looks like I've got to take out this plastic housing, which is just held in place with some clips. So let me go ahead and try to remove that carefully. Piece of cake. You've got a big block of foam that is just kind of pressed up in place up in there. And then there is this piece, which you just saw in there. This goes in like this and basically just pulls down. You can see there's a couple of friction tabs here. There is another one right here that locks into that hole. So this just pops off. Now I can easily see, if I can get my phone to focus, there is the top bolt stud coming through the firewall for the brake booster, and there's the bottom one. Now I've got to work on figuring out removing the linkage from the pedal, so I'll do that next. All right, this doesn't look bad at all. You see that pin right there, and on the opposite side there is I think they're called a sure clip. A right angle pick tool will pull that out, and then that little bolt, if you will slide right through, removing the brake pedal from the master cylinder. Then I'll be able to get those look like a 13 mil. I'll let you know in just a moment. I'll be able to loosen those up. I'm not going to loosen those just yet because I've got to go under the engine bay and start working in that section as well. So I'll get that linkage disconnected first. maybe just loosen those nuts just a little bit, break them free, and then we'll go out to the engine bay in just a moment. Okay, here is that clip. Be gentle taking this out. You don't want to bend the hell out of this thing. It's like a friction clip that locks in place. And you can see the groove on the pin. Then the pin just slides through the brake pedal. So now you can see the brake pedal is free from the brake booster. So I'll go ahead and confirm. I think those look like 13mm nuts, but I'll check here just a second. All right, confirmed 13mm. I just gave them, just broke them loose. One thing personally too, my little pro tip, I always use hand tools. I don't know, gosh, I really rarely ever use any kind of power tools when working on a car, period. Removing or installing. I'm just a freak about not stripping heads of screws. I actually watched a video earlier today on how to remove the headlight switch. And I watched a guy put a screw gun in there and I heard the thing go brrrr, and he was just rounding off that screw. So I am all about hand tools personally. It may take a little bit longer, but no chance of stripping anything or causing damage. All right, we are done under the dash for now. When we come back here, we're gonna be removing the master cylinder. So the next thing we're gonna do is go out under the hood and start taking a look at removal of those components. All right, beginning work under the hood. If you're not familiar on a W203, there's something called service mode. You can take this strut on this side of the car. There's a red button. Push the button in while lifting the hood. That'll lock it into place and allow you to have a lot more clearance in this area. It's actually designed for when they remove the engine on these cars. In the unlikely event they need to remove the engine. All right, first thing I'm gonna do, again, this is completely uncharted territory. I found zero guide in terms of how to do this. So first thing is there's a plastic piece of trim. There's a couple of tabs that removes that. At this point, I can see the master cylinder. All of the lines coming off the master cylinder are hard lines. One of the biggest things I'm gonna try to figure out is how can I do this without losing a ton of fluid? Obviously I gotta bleed the system, but, and getting the actual master cylinder out, or in the brake booster, because looking at it, I think I'm gonna have to remove this main wiring fuse box, probably loosen that up to get out of the way, because this thing looks, man, this looks super tight. So, all right, guys, and gals, I'm gonna kind of explore a little bit. I'll dig in slowly and then report back here in just a moment or two. All right, this is not gonna be fun. No wonder I didn't see anybody do this job. The first thing I'm gonna do, plan of attack, I'm removing this piece of rubber. There's just these little sharp tabs. Careful, those are really sharp that hold this on. Essentially, the way I'm looking at this is we have the brake lines to disconnect. There is power connection. We've got this, which is probably a one-time use. So I'll have to double check in my box to see if I've got a replacement that came with my new master cylinder. I've got the reservoir. The master cylinder attaches to the brake booster. The brake booster attaches to the car. But look at how tight. There's the brake booster. I don't know what exactly I'm going to have to remove to be able to get it out. Looks like this black panel is removable, potentially to be able to service this area. So, whoop, again, sharp. So I'm going to start by disconnecting the brake lines. There are these two lines. I'll disconnect these. They run into this, I forget what this is called. This it's an SBC on I have a W211 as well. So, but basically I'll disconnect these. From there, you're gonna, I intend on leaking out a little bit of fluid. I do have a metal catch tray underneath the car, just to hopefully keep my epoxy garage floor in good shape. But I'll disconnect these, remove the lines, and hopefully in terms of any additional leaking, gravity will keep it from just kind of leaking out. It's not under tons of pressure. It's obviously, there's no air in there, but hopefully I won't get a bunch flowing out. So, all right, that's the game plan. Let's see how this goes. All right, before these things get me again, I removed them. They are like barbed wire fence sharp. What I also did was marked where they go. See my little Sharpie mark there, and I put a silver Sharpie mark there. All right, The brake lines are an 11 millimeters, so I'm going to go ahead and remove those now. Wish me luck. A little bit of clarity in the brake lines. These are an 11 mil. These, the ones I need to remove, are a 12 mil. And it looks like, double check, yeah, 12 mil there. There is a special box wrench with a very small opening that you can get for brake lines. I don't have it, so I'm going to use this and just be really careful. All right, good, bad, or ugly, I'm filming this part. So I've got a rag underneath this line as best I can. And again, I've got a tray underneath the car. Just in case this kind of goes crazy and sprays, I don't want it getting on my pretty painted engine. All right. That line is broken loose. Luckily, where I live, there is no salt, so I really don't get any kind of corrosion. Don't have to worry about rusty bolts and things like that. I can see fluid seeping out, as I imagine there would be. So what I think I'll do, I've got this one broken loose. Now I'm going to go to the opposite end here. I'm going to loosen it up here. I'm also being cognizant of how tight it was. I'll kind of remember that. I don't know what to do here too, guys. I'm going to stuff a rag underneath this, because this is going to get, just going to, pardon the French, but just pee fluid out. And then there is this little rubber piece is there intentionally to allow you to be able to pull the lines out. So I'm going to get this out as quick as I can. Sorry for the dead time in the video here. I think this is the easy part. I think the biggest problem, or hardest part, is going to be making enough room to get that brake booster out. The brake booster is huge, size of a shoebox, and it's really packed in there. But we'll see. I'm getting some more fluid coming out of here, as I, again, imagined I would. All right. The nuts that go in there are pretty long. And I don't even know, I haven't done a ton of, I've done more on the caliper side, not much with on this kind of a side. I would assume they've got a flared end. I think that's pretty standard on brake lines. So basically it's the tube goes through, the metal tube goes through the hole, and then you use a special tool to flare it, which widens it out, and that causes kind of a pressure, kind of a contact. All right, I'm out there. I don't want to rush, but I also don't want to waste your time watching this part. But I just, if there's something noteworthy that's going to happen here, I want you to watch it and see it. Other than a bunch of fluid, not a ton. I'm getting fluid coming out. And there is a breach in this. All right, that looks pretty straightforward. That's going to come out. All right, I'm going to do the other one. Let's see how it goes. I'll pause for just a moment here. Almost forgot my handy fender cover. Critical when you're dealing with brake fluid. The last thing I want to do, I still have the lines on the car, is grab the lines, go over the car, and end up dripping brake fluid on the fender. That would definitely be a bad day. All right, continuing on. All right, I've already pulled these out, and I put the scrap fluid into, I've got a brake fluid catch can. And what I did is basically had a rag covering the holes on either end while I lifted them out of the car. So that's what I would suggest as well. All right, you might be thinking to yourself at this point, hey Mike, it would have made more sense to suck the extra fluid out of the reservoir, and you'd be right. Again, I suggest watching this whole thing before doing the procedure. I don't know how much I'm going to be able to get out of there, but I will remove as much of the fluid out as I possibly can. Looking over here, I mean, I only got a little bit of fluid out of there. It wasn't a massive mess. I also wiped down this area really good, and I'm going to put some tape over that just to make sure no debris lands inside there. All right, next thing I'm going to do is unplug this electrical connector and this electrical connector right here. And then I'm going to remove this, I forget what these are called too. This is like a tension nut. Very carefully, I will use my pick tool and remove this. And then there are two 13 millimeters. You can see one right there. There's one I can't even see. Those are going to be, here's another cool project I've got. Check out the channel for more details on that car. This is the new brake booster, and you can see these are the two studs. So basically, this is where the nuts are right now that I need to remove. So I'll remove the electrical connectors, that clip, the two 13s, and then I think I can get the master cylinder out of the car and then see what I'm working with as far as the brake booster goes. All right, on second thought, with this clip, I'm gonna leave that because it's a bracket that goes down there. I gotta mop up that fluid quick before it gets to the paint. But there's basically a pin that goes into the car, and because I loosened up the brake booster, I can move this. I don't think that it's bolted into the car, so I'll just leave this connected, grab the two 13s, and see if I can get this off. All right, the first nut to get to that's closest to the driver's side fender, not too bad. This other one is pretty tight, pretty tough to get to. I did a swivel. Gosh, I can't even get light on my, it's best to see it. There it is, there's my socket. So I'll give you an idea, it's a really tight fit. So I put a little bit of butyl rubber on the nut and on my socket. That way I don't drop the socket or drop the nut. You can also use a magnetic, which I don't have. This is a 13 millimeter as well. Okay, master cylinder is out. This is that bracket, and I was correct in that it just kind of sits in like a rubber grommet down inside the car. And then that other collar, there's like a rubber mounting bushing, I guess, on the master cylinder, just lays inside of here. So you don't need to take anything apart here. I think I may have found a smoking gun or part of it. Look at the rust on, which is odd because nothing rusts here in Arizona. But I don't know if that would have caused a vacuum leak. It's going to be replaced, so it doesn't matter. So, all right, I think my next plan of attack is I've got this apparatus, looks like a vacuum line, to remove. I've got a couple of wiring harnesses. I'm going to look at my new brake booster just to double check anything else. From there, I'm going to remove the two nuts inside the car. And I'm thinking, I got a suspicion that this panel, that's kind of a relief panel to move out of the way to be able to get this out without having to screw around with this. I may have to pull off this, the air box, which is a piece of cake. So, all right, keep going, and we're getting close. All of the electrical connectors are unplugged. They are all unique, so you don't need to worry about making sure you don't mix them up. This one was a little bit strange. That plugs into this module here. The clip for the release clip's on the bottom. So when you go to pull this off, reach your hand under the bottom of this, push on it, and that'll release it. So at this point, I am going to try to pull these two screws out. I have a funny suspicion again about this panel. It kind of makes sense removing this. Oh, I also pulled this off. This vacuum line I just carefully pulled off. And then this I just pulled out as well. That's just plugged in. I checked the new brake booster I have, and I could see, kind of the way it looks. So I'm gonna pull this off. We'll pull the two nuts for inside the car and see if I can wiggle this brake booster out. All right, this is the part where I guess it gets really hard. I removed the two screws here, thinking that this could just kind of push out of the way. Not the case. It looks like there's you can't even see it. It's a mile in there. There's another one of these speed clips, but there's no screw in there. and there's a ton of resistance at this bottom. Maybe this lifts up. I've got to still play around with this because I'm convinced that this is designed like this to be able to move out of the way, to be able to pull this out. I did pull the wiring harnesses, these just slip in here just to give myself some more room. The brake booster is completely loose. I've got that unbolted, but this is holding me up. So, all right, I'll keep plugging away. I did pull off also my air box and engine cover and all that. So I'll figure this out and I'll report back in just a bit, hopefully. Okay, it's the next night. I posted on several different W203 and C32 Facebook pages, and I got very little feedback. One person was like, oh yeah, pull out this piece. I still don't see how to pull this out. And even if I did, I've got all the hard lines right there in the way. So I'm thinking now, although this looks logical, like it would come out and you'd slide this thing out, I don't think that's the case. I did find other vehicles, other Mercedes, where you pull the wiper cowl. That's basically allows a room where you lift it up almost vertically. Looking underneath here, there's a ton of room, but this plastic's in the way. So I've gone ahead and removed there's 13 millimeter nuts on the 3 wiper arms. I removed those earlier this morning, and I applied some WD-40. I'm gonna grab a puller and very carefully pull those off, and then remove the screws. There are 4, looks like I've already pulled one out. I think they're a T20 as well. T20 screws that hold the cowl on. So we'll go ahead and do that, remove the cowl, and cross my fingers and see if that works. All right, man, I hope this works. All right, so what I've done, don't mind the WD-40 sitting in there. I sprayed some WD-40 again, as I mentioned, on the wiper arms. Those pulled right off. I had to wiggle this one a little bit. So not a big deal. I then removed the 4 screws, 2 there, 2 there. And then I stripped this, just pulled this gently, pulled this molding back, this rubber. And then starting on this side, I started pulling back the cowl, and you can see it's basically just pressed in place. So I'm gonna very gently, not using any tools because I don't wanna crack my windshield, I'll pull this all up. That should release the cowl, and I'll be able to remove the cowl. All right, that was easy. Not really. All right, so here's what we have. There is kind of a close-up of this. So you can see it's got that lip on it, on the cowl. That fits in to this piece. There's like a channel right here. This started to peel off too. It's just, it's held in with an adhesive. This is like a butyl rubber. When they go to replace the windshield, they'll just replace this piece. So I'm gonna very carefully push this back in, and then the good news is I think the booster is gonna fit. So let's give it a try. All right, next thing I did was put a glove over my intake. I took the other air box out as well, and came through with the air compressor and kind of blew all the junk out. There was a bunch of debris underneath this cowl. I also cleaned it really well, as you can see, and we are ready to try to remove the booster. I'm still not sure, guys and gals, but let's give it a shot. Fingers crossed. All right, bringing you with me. Wish me luck. It looks promising, but it can be deceiving. Still looks like that black wall needs to come out. It's like right in the way, especially because the arm that goes into the engine, the interior, is quite long. Wait a minute. Oh, man, I am so close. I don't want to damage anything. Seeing if I gently rotate the booster. All right, hang on a sec. All right, I went ahead, I put the 2 screws back in this metal plate just because I started having a bunch of parts, and I wanted to, again, make sure I didn't lose anything. I went ahead and pulled those 2 out, and there is, with the 2 out, this thing moves a bit, and I don't think I need a ton. Ha ha ha, bingo, that's it. All right, folks, so at this point, I'm gonna grab this, set it over on the bench, and I'm going to walk you through what not to do and what to do to be able to get this thing out. Getting it out is the hardest part. Once you've got it out, getting it back in and all that, we'll go through the whole install. That shouldn't be bad. All right, there might be a different way, maybe even a better way to remove the brake booster other than removing the cowl. But getting the cowl out is not bad at all. Again, I pre-soaked the wiper bolts just to be safe with some WD-40 probably 12 hours ago. Remove the wiper cowl. Also removed, there's 2 screws, they're T20s. They're coming in from this side. You gotta kind of pull this carpet back, right, to be able to get to those. And then there's also a 10 mil right here. This 10 mil bolt you can get to while the cowl's in place. As a matter of fact, Mercedes, you'll see a little kind of a indentation in the cowl to allow you to get a wrench in there to get that 10 mil out. If you notice, that's the play you get. And then right here, that's the play you get. It's not much, but it's all you need to be able to get the brake booster out. Again, I've gone in and really cleaned everything up. You don't need to do anything in the wiring. I'll put this back together. I was thinking maybe I could move this out of the way. I dug into there, just unplugged everything, took pictures of everything before I did it. They're all unique harnesses, so there's only one way they can go. That didn't get me anything. So again, my objective with this video is so that you guys don't waste the time I just wasted. And I had to kind of grow a set to do this project because I could find nothing about how to do this. So super psyched at this point. The hard part, I think, is over. All right, you'll notice along the firewall, that is the mating surface for the brake booster. There is a factory piece of plastic that got a little bit beat up, as you can see, when I pulled out the old booster. That's from the studs kind of hitting it as I was working it. What I'm going to do is take this, lay it on a cardboard box. I've got some of this 3M spray. I'll spray it over the entire thing, and then I'll grab this and place it back on the firewall and just kind of put it into shape as best I can. Looking at the component, I don't think there's any effective air sealing going on here. As a matter of fact, I know there isn't. You can see here, there's nothing to do with air coming through here. Again, I want to maintain the same integrity as Mercedes did, so I'll try my best to restore that, and we'll put that piece back on. So we'll go ahead and do that next. All right, that piece of plastic is not perfect, but restored. One other quick thing too, I'm about 5 hours in right now. Probably 2 of those hours I spent trying to figure out how to get the brake booster out. So I think if you watch the video and you're going to attempt this yourself, and I really take my time, I'm really methodical, I vacuumed everything, cleaned it all out in there, probably a few hours to get to this point. So next I'm going to grab the new brake booster, get it into place, and then I will install the 2 nuts that go through the firewall onto the studs. All right, one thing I like to do before I install a new part is put the old one and new one side by side, compare them, make sure everything looks correct and lines up. That is the case. I would also recommend leaving these covers in. These are just protective covers for shipping, but things like this I like to leave until the very last minute. If you notice too, this is a Mercedes part. I think it's ABT is the manufacturer, ALT. You can see it there. And we've got the same logo on this side. So again, I get my parts from FCP Euro. So this is, I would say, a OEM replacement piece, so ensuring good quality and longevity. This thing made it 145,000 miles, so, but the problem's been there for a while. So I also check the back side and make sure everything is the same, and that is the case as well. So next I'll go ahead and hopefully easily place the brake booster into the car. All right, new brake booster dropped in, piece of cake. Again, I still have the 10 mil out. You can see where I pushed that panel out a little bit, getting it in there. And I've got these 2 screws out. I was thinking about it. I haven't put the nuts on the backside, on the interior of the car. I was thinking, I wonder if it would make more sense to do the master cylinder now, because this bolt's not bad, but this one was kind of a bear to get to. But looking at it, I think I'm just going to mount the master cylinder after I got the brake booster in place, and then mount the master cylinder reservoir up to the top. I think it basically just kind of pushes in place. So because I'm bleeding the system, I think that's the easiest way to do it. All right, if you're following along, wait till I get past this part to do the upcoming 8 or 10 steps, because I'm questioning the order of ops, the best way to do this. So there is a bolt that goes through here. You can see it's kind of a pin that comes through on that side. That's what holds the reservoir on top of the master cylinder. I do have to end up taking this thing off, more on that in a little bit. But I'm thinking it's still probably best to mount the brake booster, then mount the new master cylinder in, then do the reservoir, because this is a piece of cake to get to. So I'm going to do that, and again, if there's any issues with that order, I'll let you know. All right, here's what it's looking like underneath the dash. Here's another pro tip too. When you remove the old brake booster, take this. I don't know if this piece spins, this right here, but if it does, make sure it's lined up the exact same way. That way it's gonna see where it's fitting right in between the pedal real nice. Because otherwise, if it's tweaked 90 degrees, you're gonna try to push this thing through the firewall and it's gonna be hung up by the brake pedal. I have the studs coming through. Let's see, there you go. There's one of them way back there, you can see it. And I also have the brake booster came with a couple of new nuts, but I prefer this. These are the OEM nuts. They've got that kind of a, I forget what these are called, backed nut, I think. I'm going to use the original ones. I don't think they're like a one-time use. So at this point, I'll go ahead and put those on and torque them down. Again, I'm all about hand tools. All right, got both of the nuts on there and tightened up. I don't know what the torque spec is. Again, I could find 0 on this job. I haven't done the pin yet that goes through the brake pedal. I'll do that here in just a bit. Decided just to button this up while I'm in here. So my pin is in. I made sure it's on the same side. So the clip is going to go towards the passenger or driver side of the car. Here is the clip. And basically, there's no way I'm going to be able to do this one-handed and hold the camera. But basically, you just slide this over. See this opening? Slide it on, and you'll hear a click, and then it'll lock into place. All right, I've got it pushed in, but not all the way. And then that's what it'll look like and sound like when you've got it in the correct position. Again, make sure when you're removing this, you don't beat the hell out of it. I see where some people just really start wrecking these things, and then they don't work effectively. And when you're talking about your brake pedal, it's probably the most important thing on the car. So, all right, other than putting everything together underneath here, we're good here. Let's go back to the engine bay and continue work out there. Sorry, one other thing I wanted to mention, after you've got the brake booster pushed in, before you put those nuts in, even before you push it into place, double check and make sure all of your vacuum lines and your wiring harnesses are out of the way. You don't want to torque that thing down and end up pinching it, because you're going metal to metal. You could really make a mess if you're not careful. So, all right, I've got the 2 nuts on the inside of the car. We're good there. Next thing I'm going to do is, when I do something like this, there's several different things that have got to happen. I'm going to make a short list of these items, like putting the electrical cover and wiring back here, you know, my electrical lines that plug into the booster, kind of my order of operations. So I don't mind. I'll take a little time, you know, spend 10 minutes and list out all the remaining steps and make sure I have the correct order, such that I don't get, you know, 12 steps in and realize the second step I made a mistake. So I'll do that now. All right, got my steps listed out, and I'm going to go ahead and follow those. Carefully considered. I went around, looked at all the parts I've got out, and this is just for the engine bay. I'll get that 100%, and then we'll tackle the interior. So the first thing is going to be to plug in all of the wiring that goes into the brake booster. There are, I believe, 2 harnesses that go into that, and then there's going to be another one that will go into the actual reservoir for the power steering fluid. All right, one quick thing. Once you get the brake booster wires plugged in, there are 2 of those. There's going to be 2 other harnesses. These both plug into the reservoir. There's 2 of them that plug into the reservoir, one for level and one for I don't know what. But all right, from there we'll move along. All right, next thing I'm going to do is replace these 2 screws and that 10 mil. All right, those items are complete. Next thing I'm going to do is restore all this wiring. Again, you don't have to do this. It's just a matter of plugging everything in, putting the cover back on, and then that'll be cleaned up. All right, got my electrical box there all set, situated. I cleaned it up really good and covered up. Next thing is going to be installing the master cylinder. All right, in the box of the master cylinder, there's also one in the brake booster, is this new O-ring, which from the looks of it is going to go right in here. I'll go ahead and push that in and get it in place before I install the master cylinder. All right, I've got that O-ring on, that just kind of pressed on. Just make sure it's not twisted. I've decided also I'm going to transfer over, there is this sensor. I'm going to unscrew this from the old master cylinder and install it into the new one. You can see there's a cap here for the line. That's the brake line that comes in. I'm also going to very carefully take a pick tool and remove this kind of a one-way collar, and I'll put it back onto this piece. And that, if you recall, I happen to have a piece right here. This arm right here is going to slip up like that, and this goes into the car. So I'll probably put this piece in first when I'm getting ready to install the master cylinder. I will wait on the reservoir itself. Again, my thought here is that it's going to be pretty easy to install the reservoir on later, but by having it off, it's going to be much easier for me to get to this nut that I've got to put in back here. So, all right, let me go ahead and transfer everything over, and we'll get going. One other thing too, I noticed this has got some kind of a wonky extension here, but it's just a cap. It's got some really clever stuff going on. This has got a cap in it already, so I'm good there. All right, so get everything transferred over and we'll continue on. All right, I've got this, I don't know what this is, sensor of some kind. That's where the other harness plugs in. I torqued this down. I looked at it and was considering torquing it when it was back in the car, but it's a pretty tight fit. So that's good. I took my reservoir off here as well. This is my old unit. So now I'll go ahead and install this. Once again, checking to ensure I've got this O-ring seal in the correct position. All right, they give you replacement nuts to put on, which have that little indentation. I forget what that signifies. It's, I forget what it is, but it's basically like a tension fit. I believe these are a one-time use, so I would suggest using the new ones that come with the master cylinder. All right, master cylinder bolts, nuts are on there, nice and secure. Again, I don't know the torque specs, sorry. I just gave it a good snug, knowing that it's brakes, but don't break it. And then that bracket goes into the pin in the hole. There's a rubber grommet in the car. Again, hopefully by now you've mopped up any residual brake fluid you've got lying down in that little valley. This rubber grommet goes on to this bracket, and then this piece I've got just kind of pushed on. If you reuse this and remove it, I put mine back in the vise just to tighten it down, just to touch, just so there's some resistance. You don't want it sliding off. I don't think this is going to go anywhere, but that'll hold it in place. Okay, on to the next part. Next thing I'm going to do is secure the vacuum line into the booster. This I had removed from this black plate. This just basically pulls up that little, you can see where the rubber piece just kind of mounts back in. You also want to take a look. I suggest taking this, especially when you're kind of wrestling around with things. Notice here, like this clip has come off. I can push that back on. That goes on like that to hold that in place. And more importantly, making sure that it goes into right there, the blower okay, and everything is good there. So we've got a good solid connection there. Make sure that hasn't come unplugged. All right, and then from here, this piece is just a press fit. Pressing that in there. And then we also have, this is gonna go up like that. And then we also have this line. Be very careful. A lot of times these get brittle and things like that. All right, that takes care of that vacuum line. I'll re-secure this into place as well, and we'll go to the next part. All right, next thing you do is to install the master cylinder reservoir. So these two plugs are going to come out. The master cylinder, I'm going to clean mine with, I'd suggest using like a brake clean, just to kind of get any residual dirt out of there. It'll kind of press on. You'll hear it kind of lock into place. I've done these before. And then there is this screw that'll go right through here, and it goes into that other side. So I'll go ahead and get that secured now. Plan B, mount the reservoir first, because you can't get to that. You can't get a socket in to get to this screw. So I had to pull it back out. I'll just pop it back in, tighten up those nuts, and we'll be good. Okay, back in, remounted everything. the reservoirs in. I also put the top on the reservoir, again, just to prohibit any kind of contaminants getting in there. I still have my caps on for my 2 lines. The next thing I'm going to do is replace the cowl and the wipers, but I'm going to call it a night for this evening, and I'll get back to it tomorrow. See you shortly. All right, it is the next night, and I am back in the shop working on the car. So according to my to-do list that I've created, my next step is going to be to reinstall the cowl, the windshield cowl. Prior to doing so, I'm going to do something kind of cool real quick that I'll show you guys. If you notice, like underneath where the wiper arms go, it's quite faded, and these always kind of get beat up, especially in these older Mercedes. They'll get cracked and all that. So what I'm going to do is give it a really good cleaning, and then I'm going to coat it with ceramic coating. For ceramic coating, I use this product here. I was turned on to this by Alex from Legit Street Cars. This is Armor Shield 9 from Avalon King. It's an awesome product, and if you catch it on sale, it's about 50 or 60 bucks for a little bottle, and a bottle will do an entire car. I have another video on my channel where I take my E55 AMG and do a full paint correction, and I apply this to the entire car. When you use this stuff on plastic trim like this, you'll see a difference it makes. It really makes it kind of like a low gloss black sheen, but it restores it much better than any plastic trim restorer that I've seen, and it'll last. So again, get a good look at the way this thing looks. We'll go get it cleaned up. You see some dirt and junk in there. I'll just get it cleaned up real quick, and then we'll dry it, and we'll apply the Avalon King, and then we'll get this installed. All right, I'm going to use a hose on this, and prior to getting it wet, there is a module underneath here. This is a T15. I'm going to go ahead and remove this, and then we'll go ahead and proceed with cleaning it. Okay, sorry for any wind noise. I'm outside and it's a little windy. To clean it, I'm going to use an all-purpose cleaner. I use this diluted 10-to-1. I'll just give it a liberal spray down here. Once I do that, I'm going to take a detailing brush, just a set of these I've got, and I'll go ahead and agitate it and get it cleaned up. So go ahead and do this, rinse it off with the hose, hit it with the air compressor to dry it, and then we'll move on to applying the Avalon King coating. All right, got our piece all cleaned up. Still kind of faded looking a little bit. And I dried it with the air compressor as well. Now I'm just going to take the Armor Shield. I just use the applicator that they supply. In this case, I'm not going to use like a pad because I'm not going on to, you know, a painted surface. We'll go ahead and apply this. I'll do kind of a before and after to show you. And unlike a lot of your plastic restorations that, you know, you put those things on and they look great for the first day or two, and then you wash the car and they go to back to the way they were. This basically will stay like this for a long time, several months, even after washes. And you know, I'm out here in Arizona with the crazy hot sun. All right, let's see here. Let me get a better angle. Okay, I just did this area. I didn't even do this detailed area, just this plastic here. Look at the difference it makes. And again, this will look like this, you know, a month from now, even after I wash it. So I'll continue with this, get the rest of this cleaned up, and then we'll go ahead and get this installed. Okay, I anticipate this being a little bit tricky, but not terrible. I did mount my sensor, in case you're wondering, on the bottom. So this basically goes underneath like this. Let's go this way first to get through our wiring here. Several different things going on here. I also have to catch the channel here, right, where it goes into the windshield. Actually, start that side. There's a little drain plug over here where the fluid from the windshield, rainwater, goes in there. So now, if you recall, the seal that's on the windshield. There we go. This will click into that seal. And obviously I'd made sure that my wiper arms are right over, the holes for the wiper arms are right there. All right. That is looking good. So I'll go ahead and get again, there's 4 bolts that hold the cowl in place, and then I'll go ahead and get the wipers mounted, and I'll catch up with you in just a moment. Okay, wiper arms, washer, wiper cowl is all set. One other little thing, I'm big into attention to detail, in case you haven't figured that out by now. I did not like the way this looked. To me, that's very unfinished to have a nut like that. I did the same thing on my E55. I bought these plastic caps that fit over the top of the bolts. So I added those. So I'll add one down there. I just wanted to show you guys with that off. I also installed this piece of rubber trim here, this gasket for under the hood. All right, on to the next part. Sorry, one other quick thing on the wiper blades. They have a spline on the axle that comes out for the wiper blades. So when you go to put it back on, you've got to kind of play with it and get it to line up correctly. This one's got like a squared off end, so it's pretty easy. But this one and this one have kind of a gear spline, if you will. I made a note to double check and make sure that I turn the wipers on and double check once I get the battery hooked up, just to make sure they're not hitting the edge of the car or coming down below the cowl. So another good note there, I think. All right, moving right along with the reinstallation. The next thing on my list is the brake lines. Again, I was very careful to keep these clean. I drained the fluid out, just held it upside down and shook it out in the garbage can. And now what I'll do, now and only now at this point, I'll remove these protective caps on the master cylinder. If you recall, I had a piece of duct tape here as well. And take those off. And now I can gently take this. Let's see, I can see the way it goes here. I'll take this, lay this down. And get this into position. And now I can see the brake lines coming right down. There we go. And again, I had very little fluid come out. I was quite surprised at how little fluid came out. This, definitely be extremely careful when you are threading these back in, as I am being. This block that this is going into is made of aluminum. So you want to be super careful. Okay, I got those started, and then I'll start it inside the master cylinder, making sure the 2 lines are where they need to be. All right, so now at this point, make sure that's started. Yep, we are started. I'll grab my wrench, go ahead and torque these down. Brake lines are secured. In terms, again, of torque specs, I don't know what to tell you there. And this is made of aluminum, so be careful, but it is your brake, so you want to make sure it's pretty tight. Also notice I wiped off any residual brake fluid that was in this area, just so this way when I get to the point where I bleed the brakes, which we'll do in this video, I've got nothing here. So if I do see any fluid for some reason, then I know I have a leak. Also did the same thing there, and you can see both my lines are tightened, and then this rubber piece is going to fit right inside of there. All right, on to the next part. According to my list, the next thing to install is the rubber molding, and if you recall, I even went as far as to make a mark where these little clips go. Definitely take these things out because they will bite you otherwise. So got those in. Now I'll just install the moldings on both sides. If you've been watching along this whole time, you're a trooper, and you must have the same problem as I have. If you recall, I said that my battery terminals were a little dirty. This is the tool that I use. Got them both disconnected. It's kind of tough to do with one hand here, but basically it's a wire brush that's intended for batteries. I'll do a better job than that, but you can see where it cleans off the corrosion. And then for that part, it's got that cap, and now I can use that to clean that part. So get everything nice and clean, and then I'll put some grease on there to ensure it doesn't corrode further. All set. If you do this job, especially with this tool or something like it, make sure you have both the terminals disconnected, because if you touch the negative terminal here, then touch the body of the car, you've created ground and you're gonna have a mess. So be careful there. Okay, so at this point, I've got everything put back together in the engine bay, including the cover that goes over the fluid reservoir for the brakes. I am going to bleed the brakes, but I wanted to just put everything together, make sure I had it all properly assembled, like this clip. I had to put this back in, and then in just a little bit, I'll bleed the brakes. We'll cover that in this video, and I'll show you basically the procedure as if we're just starting that. I also need to reassemble under the dash, put all that back together. Pretty straightforward. That's just going to be a reverse order of all the items that came out. Here's a little pro tip that I like to do. I lay everything out, all my parts, in logical order. Like this is going to be the last thing to go in. And this will be the first piece, and then everything in between. That way I don't, pigeonhole myself and realize, oh shoot, I forgot that, and you end up taking stuff back apart. Again, notice I use these little magnetic trays to keep all my screws straight. In some cases, like here, I'll put the screw back into the piece. That way I'm very, very methodical about it and make sure I don't lose pieces and all the right screws go back in the right spot. So I will go ahead and get the bottom of the dash put back together. If I notice anything noteworthy while I'm in there, I'll let you know. Be right with you. All right, well, that didn't take long. What I would suggest is before you start putting this back together, just double check those two nuts, the two 13 millimeters that are holding the brake booster in place. Check the torque on those, and also double check, let's see if I can spy it here, your clip, the pin. This is critical to your life, basically. Just making sure everything is good here and that it is properly attached to the brake pedal. All right, folks, I really hope you're watching this entire video before attempting this repair. I watch other videos on YouTube and, look at different information online. And I was given kind of false or wrong information about removing this piece. When I removed this piece, I thought it was really, really difficult to get out. When I put it back in, it was brutal. Now it's not lining up, and I ended up nicking my center console here and here. Made a mess out of it. Definitely not precision. I went back online, did more research, and found another video about removing the actual center console. And in that video, I learned that there are these two plastic covers. Here's one in, and then here's one out. They just pop out. And underneath those plastic covers, you can see it right there. There is a T40 bolt. And basically this gets turned like a half a turn. You do not remove it. It basically just gets turned a half a turn, and that'll allow you to easily remove this. When you go to put it back in, you tighten it up a half turn and you're good to go. I think I broke the clip on mine, and again, made a mess. I'm gonna buy a new console. I just looked on eBay. I'll order it tonight. I found another one. Mine's got an actual nick on it over here, right there. That's always driven me nuts. So I'll just get a new console. So be careful. And again, I told you I'd let you know if there's things that are noteworthy. This is driving me absolutely crazy. I'm gonna get this thing ordered and get it replaced ASAP. All right, let's continue. All right, it is the next night and we're on to bleeding the brakes. So here is the way to do this if you're not familiar. You could do it with two people, and you have one person in the car operating the pedal and the other person open and closes the valve. It's kind of the old school way of doing it. I am using this, which is kind of a one-person operation. It's called a power bleeder made by Motive. I got this from FCP Euro. I'll put a link in the description below. It's got a gauge on there, a pressure gauge. And I've also already added fluid into it. I put one bottle of the fluid I'm using, which is this product right here. Again, ordered from FCP Euro. Is original equipment for the manufacturer for Mercedes. I put fluid in the reservoir. You probably don't even need to because I'm going to power bleed, but I did it anyway. Brought that up to the level. It's full of air, the whole system, obviously. I also jacked up the rear of the car. I've got it under jack stands. If you're not familiar with the bleeding process, basically what you're doing is forcing any residual air out of the system, and you're going to have a ton of air if you did the same procedure that I did, replacing the master cylinder. You know, that's a huge vacancy that you're going to have with air in it. So what you're doing, and we're going to do this here in just a moment, we're going to hook up the pressure bleeder, build up pressure, we'll test it, make sure there's no leaks in the system, and then we're going to proceed to bleed the brakes. You start with the furthest wheel from the master cylinder. In this case, it's going to be my rear passenger side, and then you just go around the car wheel by wheel until you get to the final wheel. In my case, it's going to be the front driver's side. So let's go ahead and get into this. Okay, so the first part of the process is going to be to attach this nut to your reservoir. When you order these devices, they come specific for the manufacturer. So Mercedes, Audi, BMW, whatever. So obviously this is going to thread right onto the factory attachment. From here, what you do is pressurize the system by simply pumping this up, and you will notice, there we go, that there is a pressure gauge, and you want to bring it up to about 15 psi. So we'll go ahead and do that. And again, the first thing to do is to pressurize the system, and then just give it maybe 5 or 10 minutes, which we'll do, and make sure that you don't have any reduction in pressure. If you do, if there's no point in bleeding the brakes because you've got air infiltrating into the brake system. So we'll go ahead and do this. I'm at about 10 psi so far. If you go a little bit over, that's okay. All right, so right there I'm at 15 psi. So I'll go ahead and give it 5 minutes or so, and we'll let it sit there and make sure we don't have any leaks. I ended up giving it another couple of pumps, one up just above the 15 psi mark. I let it sit for 8 minutes, so it has not budged. So very confident that we do not have any kind of a leak. So now we'll go from here to the back of the car. All right, so here's the setup back here. First thing I did was put a box wrench on the bleeder valve, which in my case is an 8 mm. I think I might have changed these in the past. So I don't know if the C32s have an 8 mm from the factory, but that's what the wrench size is for mine. I've got my line, clear line attached down on my catch can, and I've just got my catch can hanging here with a cable. Again, I'll put a link in the description for this. So at this point, what you're going to do is open up the bleeder valve. We're going to go ahead and do this, and we're going to see the fluid coming out. My fluid was is not that old, and I had done a bleed on the car before, thinking that was part of my issue, and then later realized it was actually the brake booster. So the fluid shouldn't be that bad. I can see it coming out. You can see it collecting here at the bottom. There's a whole bunch of air coming out too, and you'll see the air. It's best to have a clear line here because you want to be able to see the discoloration and also the air coming through the system. And that's what we're trying to do, is get the old fluid and the air out. So we'll let this continue to bleed out. And now we're getting back to where we've got more fluid, less air. And I'm okay doing kind of a pretty full flush. I've got 2 bottles of brake fluid, so I'm okay if we go through quite a bit. I've heard also, I've not seen it, but I've heard of dye you can put in, and that way you'll be able to see, like if you did a blue dye, your old fluid is going to be blue, and then when it goes to clear, you know you flushed out all the old fluid. I don't have that, but we'll continue to monitor. Now, as you can see, the majority of the air is gone. We do still have a few little bubbles. We'll work those out. We also want to make sure that the bleeder up front, we want to check that periodically to make sure that our pressure is still good. It's going to come down from 15 psi. You just don't want it to go, down to 0. So it may require a few pumps as you do each brake side. So I'll continue to let this go. I still see a bit of air coming out. We'll continue to let it bleed, and I will check back with you in just a bit. Okay, as you can see, we've got just a few teeny tiny air bubbles coming out, so we're getting close to the end of the bleeding. Again, I'm doing pretty much a full proper flush. That's quite a bit of fluid. I don't know if that's how much is in the entire line, but it's got to be pretty close. So I want to do that though. I want to get it all out and get all fresh fluid in there. And this is the longest line, being the furthest one from the car. So I'll let this go for another couple of minutes. Again, I did have to go up front and give it another couple of pumps on the bleeder, and I brought it up to about 16 PSI. It dropped to about 13 during this bleed. So I think there is another little air bubble. I think we're really, really close here. All right, once you're done, you want to go ahead and tighten up the bleeder screw. You don't have to go crazy on these. And when you do that, you may see just kind of air coming out. That's not air in the line. That's just it backfeeding through that little vent it's got. And there again is the amount of fluid I have. You can see some discoloration. It's not perfect, so the older the fluid, the darker it's going to be. So I will continue this process on the other 3 wheels and give you an update here in just a bit. Once you've tightened up the bleeder screw, I put a rag around it when I remove the line just to make sure I don't splatter any brake fluid onto my pretty brakes. And then just replace the cap and you're good to go. Here's something interesting too. If you look at this, try not to shake it up. Look at the fluid. You can see the darker stuff is going to be the older stuff and the lighter stuff is the newer at the bottom. So that's a pretty good indication. I probably did more than I needed, but again, I'd rather do that than less. All right, I'll continue on. All right, I'm just about done with the rear driver's side. Another thing you want to do is keep an eye on the level of the fluid in the bleeder and make sure that doesn't run out. Mine is low, so I'm going to go ahead and add more fluid. Anytime you depressurize this system, don't do it here, do it from the actual bleeder. And again, I'll normally put a rag around this just to make sure nothing sprays and gets on the car. Okay, I put my second container of brake fluid in there, tightened up the cap, repressurized to about 15 PSI. Now what I'll do is take my catch can. Again, I'll reiterate, some people might blow me up in the comments. I did a lot of bleeding here. I want to really make sure this is flushed out. So now what I'll do is take this, put it back into the old container to be able to recycle. All right, catch can's empty. I will continue to bleed. Okay, bleeding is complete. Got the wheels back on. I torqued the wheels. It is a 90 foot-pound torque. And also, if you don't have one of these, go get you one. This is a nylon sleeve socket, 17 mil, to make sure you don't damage your wheels. Also, I removed the bleeder. Again, you want to depressurize at the actual bleeder itself, not at this connection, just to minimize your mess. And also with regard to gravity, you're going to get a bunch of fluid flowing over otherwise. I also had to take a little bit of fluid out of there. You can use like a turkey baster. I have a big syringe. I think I showed you that earlier. Took that out, got my level correct. I took another good look around and make sure there's no leaks. Everything looks nice and dry. So at this point, moment of truth, we're going to test this and see how the brakes are. I'm just going to take it real easy. I've got a big horseshoe driveway, so I'll gently drive around there. And once that is proven to be good, we'll take it out on the road. Okay, folks, at this point, I am ready to try this. Not going to lie, I am nervous. Since I bought this car, and if you watch my other intro video, I've owned this car, I think over the last 12 years, it's been several different times, 3 different times. At this point, I don't think I'll ever sell it. Since I've ever owned this car, the brakes have never been good. So let's see if this fixes the issue. First, I'm going to try the brakes and make sure. It's going to gently back out. Feel really good. No whooshing sound coming out. Now what I'll do, I'm going to try this a few times just forward and back, and I will also take a look underneath the car to make sure there's no leaks. Okay, so far so good. I've just been rolling it in and out of the garage. No leaks, no issues. Seems to be good. We'll know when I drive it better. One other important thing I want to tell you too. When I was dealing with putting this center console area together, again, I got to put my vent back in, the car would not go out of park. If you're not aware, if you pull this little coin tray out, pull this out, lift at it from this side, it'll lift up. There's a little lip that kind of goes in here. Pull that up and you'll see kind of a little notch all the way down, and there's a little black lever. Push the black lever forward and that'll allow you to shift the car in and out of gear without needing to put the key on or having to brake. Apparently when the brake fluid is super low, as mine was, the car won't recognize the brake and won't shift out of gear. So hopefully that's helpful. So, all right, I'm gonna continue to test this, double check for leaks, and then we're gonna go out on the road. All right, I am out driving the car. I'm only doing the speed limit. And I've been testing it. This is kind of a back road that I live on. It ends right up here, and that's basically a gentle press of the brake. So night and day. This car has never had this kind of brake performance. Sorry for the focus. Night and day improvement. Another thing I noticed as well, when I was sitting at a light before with the leak I had, I believe I had a massive leak in the brake booster. I could have my foot on the pedal and the car would sit there, but then my foot would just slowly sink to the floor and literally could get to the point where it's bottomed out. I'd have to pump the brakes to get the car to stay in, you know, in a stop position. Right now, I lightly have my foot on the brake, not moving it, and the car, of course, is not moving. So again, I think I've solved the issue. So now I'm gonna go out, drive it some more, do a little bit more spirited driving. I probably have a bunch of glazing on these brake pads because there was never any proper pressure. So I'm gonna go clean that off and have a little fun. I'll report back in just a bit. All right, went out for a fun drive, and apparently it didn't go that fast because I have am in Arizona, and as you can see, it's a praying mantis. We have these things all over the place, so apparently it didn't go too fast to be able to get him off there. But the brakes are awesome, folks. Night and day difference. The job was, about 9 hours it took me to do everything, but that included trying to figure out how to get the brake booster out. I probably spent at least a couple hours on that. If you're to do it and watch this video, it's probably a, you know, being as particular as I am, maybe a 6-hour job, 7 hours maybe, and very, very satisfying. And again, you know, I did the full brake bleed. I did check my pads and rotors while I was in there, and they're in really good condition. I use, forget the name of the manufacturer for the rotors, Speed Tech, I believe. And then I use Akebono pads exclusively. They are incredible. They last forever. No dust. You can see the wheels stay really nice and clean, and they really stop well. So I think at this point, I'm gonna go ahead and wrap this video up. In terms of the center console debacle, this you know, stuff on the dash, I can let you guys know in the description what the outcome is of that. I want to wrap this video up. It's been a long video so far. So if you do have any questions, definitely let me know. In the description, I'll have all the parts I used, some of the tools as well. There is more content coming on this car, a whole bunch. I'm going to do a bunch more mechanical stuff. And then on my channel, I also have an E55 AMG. And also Car Mizu, which is a really crazy, cool, high-end car audio build. So that should be it for now. Thank you very much for watching. If you have not yet already, please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Take care.